In this video, I'm going to talk about my expectations for the first class of players drafted by the Houston Rockets throughout this rebuild, which is Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. Tap in right now. Enjoy. The Rockets Chop Shop is your one-stop shop for all your basketball needs, for highlights, analysis, podcasts. We do it all here at the Rockets Chop Shop. Make sure you hit the like button on the videos that you watch if you enjoy them. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications from all the great drops that we have on the channel. Also, you can visit the Chop Shop merch store and get you some of the swaggiest gear in the Houston Rockets kingdom. And if you want, you can always support the channel directly through donations. And if you want, you can support us through our partnerships with our sponsors. The Rockets Chop Shop is made by fans, for fans, and we're going to keep rocking and keep dropping that heat.
This is something I know.
So we are in year 4 of the rebuild, and the first class of players we drafted were Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun, along with some others that are not even here anymore. But for the focus of this video, our 2 inaugural players brought into this rebuild, the 2 kids that we have seen grown over the years. What are some reasonable expectations for these 2 guys coming into this year? And I wanted to discuss this, right? I wanted to talk about this because I feel like, we need to take a step back. I think we need to take a step back and look at this from a big picture point of view when it relates to these 2 players. And I'll start off with Jalen Green. I know there's a lot of discourse about JG and, his ups and downs throughout his time here as a Houston Rocket. The fan base is pretty much split on him. There are either people that just love him to death and there's people that hate him. There's some people that are in between. Some people think he can't do wrong. Some people think he can't do right. I think the best approach to take with Jalen Green is a measured approach, which was I feel like I've always been. Now, I ain't gonna lie. I started off on some real crazy like Kobe type stuff, but over the years, it's kind of morphed over time. And it's okay to evolve your conclusions of a player based on new information. So when I say big picture for Jalen Green, what I mean by is looking at his macro growth over a period of time. If you focus on him just by game or month by month, or, if you look at it based on his stretches, he is a wildly erratic player when it comes to consistency, not very consistent. The highs are really high. The lows are really low. But overall, you get kind of a mixed bag of things when it comes to him. But you step back and let's trace JG's story from year 1, right? He comes into a context with Stephen Silas as the coach. The Rockets are freshly off the James Harden era. He is a rookie thrust into a starting lineup with the likes of Christian Wood, Eric Gordon, Jayshawn Tate, Kevin Porter Jr. I don't remember who our lineup was at the point, to even be honest. But you put him in that context where the focus isn't even on trying to just develop players. They were really trying to win that first half of that season, right? They were trying to win. You had Daniel Tice on the team for some weird reason. And that really just went to kaputs because I think we ended up losing 17 games in a row. So he was getting reps, but the reps were not meaningful enough to cultivate the type of player that you want leading your franchise. And I'm going to keep referring back to that because I think between him and the rest of the players that we brought in for that time period are the ones that experienced a lot of the pre-Ime Udoka era. They were getting reps, but those reps aren't really what you would need to develop, right? That's not the only thing. Just being on an NBA court doesn't automatically give you the ability to just soak in how to be a good NBA player. So they were getting reps. And I think Stone had pointed out that at that point, they believed that them getting on-court reps was the avenue for them to be able to develop and also for them to be able to, he wouldn't say this out loud, but to reach their goals of tanking and drafting more players. My disagreement with that is well known. If you watch this channel, you already know I believe that raising players in the NBA is not just throwing them out there because that's a recipe for failure. And to me, that's going to come in back into my point that I'm going to try to make. So for Jalen, first year, I think he has that Boston game where he drops 30. Outside of that, he was terrible. Right. He was terrible the first half of his rookie year. He had a couple of flashes here and there, but for the most part, struggling on pretty much every aspect of the game. And to the point where he was being relegated to playing the corner. And at that point, when you're in it, you see like, oh my God, they're treating him bad. I mean, he couldn't do much at that time because the barriers that were in place, whether it was having a big man in Christian Wood as your center, that anytime Christian Wood would set a screen for Jalen Green, it would be for Christian Wood to slip into a post up for himself. So he never really got the opportunity to really work that 2-man game with them. And then, everybody else was just out there looking at him like, this kid, he's just here. Like, bro, I'm going to get mine. Right. You move on to the second half of that season when there was kind of a mini clearing of the way with getting those players, getting those players out of the way. You start making some trades to clear up some of the space. You shut down Eric Gordon. And then we got to see the holy flash that was the JG post All-Star break, the one that sets the tone for the rest of his career, right? I'm talking about dropping 30 bombs, chasing Allen Iverson's record. Even though we were losing throughout this time, we were able to see just how talented and how much of a ceiling that Jalen Green has. So that set us up for year 2, right? Year 2 was, okay, dude, you were pushing AI's record. You a bucket, like we got to see what you wanted. We got Christian Wood out the way, right? We packed him out. EG was still there though, right? Eric Gordon is still there. But you got Kevin Porter Jr. coming back. This is supposed to be a year where they were going to be given the keys to run the show as they see fit, and everything was supposed to just be like that, right? Plus we get into the second year where now, the two centers, which is a crazy storyline, Bruno Fernando and Alperen Sengun, we're kind of vying for that starting spot to start training camp. We all knew that was Cap. But regardless, like the center you're bringing in is a guy that actually set screen for you, right? And regardless of what Sengun became as an offensive player in that second year, he was a role player, extremely role player based. Like that was his deal, setting up KPJ and Jaylen and getting them to their spots, right? So we come into year 2 under Steven Silas, and that season, it was kind of mixed at first, but that quickly went to pots, right? I think by the time we hit January of that season, that's the Jabari draft year, we were already staring down the barrel of like a 15-game losing streak. Shout out to the making fun of the Spurs by the GM's wife. Ended up being incredibly ironic, and a lot of karma came back because we proceeded to outdo them or compete with them on the losing streak, right? And there was something I saw with Jaylen during that period in that second year that really disappointed me, right? This was when we were going on a terrible streak. He looked so dejected. It disappointed me, but in retrospect, it was really, if you look at it from a human standpoint, all that losing for somebody that's not used to being in that situation, it can be tiresome. And then you get to the part of not having the structure. If you guys remember, these were there was a game, I forgot whether it was Minnesota, that he just looked like he was just out of there, bro. The dude had no energy in his talk, just lost his confidence. And he just played bad for almost that entire month. And it looked like he didn't care, or it looked like at that point, it looked like he didn't care. But to me, it looked like somebody that was giving up. And to me, at that moment right there was a kind of a marking point in his NBA career, in my opinion, because that is where a lot of players kind of go left, especially on bad teams. And that's where things fall off, right? That's where these guys fall into the obscurity of being, high volume player on a bad team, right? But he came out of that slump. I think he dropped a 40 something point game against Charlotte. Kept on pushing, post All-Star break, had a pretty strong finish to the end of the year with that team there, which culminated with, as we all know, the firing of Steven Silas and whatnot. Okay, so we get into the third year, summer of Jaylen Green. Second year was decent, averaged 20-something points. There was a slump there that really kind of took him out, but he finished off fairly okay, fairly strong. You kind of get Steven Silas out of the way, and you move out some of the players that were on the roster, and now you bring in the summer, this past summer of the 2023 summer, you're bringing in Ime Udoka, you're bringing in Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks. You got, so many guys the team is changing. We're adding players, Jeff Green, all these moves are being made to provide structure. And I think for the fan base, right, this is where everybody was like, finally, we will get to see JG in his true form. We will get to see him be the player that we drafted number 2 overall in his true form. And guess what happened, right? He struggled. He struggled a lot, right? He struggled a lot, especially in that first half of the season. He struggled a lot. Like he was on the starting five, one of the worst players on that unit, and was benched multiple times. But we all know, well accounted for lesser players, lesser talented players at that, right? And in the moment, if you look at it just in that season alone, if you look at it just from that, you would say, like, I'm ready to give up on this player. But you have to look at it once again in totality. The reason I was never fully out on him, even though he struggled, all this stuff going on, is because if you look at it from the big picture view, like I just went through leading up to that point, that this season that just passed is the first time that he and the other players that were here through the rebuild were provided the actual structure to be successful NBA players. Right. So there's a lot of teaching on how to do the things the right way and not the wrong way. There's a lot of unlearning of bad habits that happen. And for a player that's young, even though nominally he is not a young player, right? Third year is literally the standard for the definition in the CBA for an NBA veteran. For our players, it was let's get reps and try to tank, and then we'll think about structure later, right? How do you build a competent young man that develops into a player that's going to be a franchise player in the NBA? You got to surround them with structure. You got to put veterans around them that are going to help them kind of cushion the fall of landing in the NBA. You got to put a good coach around them that's going to hold them accountable for good and bad, as Ime did by benching Jaylen. You got to put players around them that highlight their talent and can help them, as we saw with Fred VanVleet, who wasn't a guy that was trying to take away from him, but trying to add to him. You got to put those structures in place. You got to have the locker room right with the Kevin Porter Jr. situation, being able to excise him off the team based on his actions, and then allowing Jaylen to be around more professional players that really didn't give him that comfort that he would have seen with Kevin Porter Jr. So all of this is happening at the same time. You have the expectations of being the number one scoring option on a team that's pushing for the playoffs, right? So this is where grace comes in. And you see that in that 5-6 month stretch, he went through all of that in the season, Ime Udoka's first year, and then something clicked for him around late January. I would say, from my point, it started there. Late January, something clicked. It started off with rebounding. The rebounding numbers went up. Rebounding, the reason that's significant to me, as somebody, like I didn't play basketball professionally, right? I played college football. But in sports, in every sport, there are certain actions that you see on film that tell you that a player is different, right? Like if you were lazy, and like I'll use football for an example. One of the things that you can tell on both sides of the ball, offense or defense, about a player that has a high motor is they're always running on film. What I mean by that is, let's say if you're a receiver or a running back or you're a lineman, whenever the practice film is on and they're doing a play, even when the whistle blows, they still run and finish through the rep. Whether if it's a running back with the ball, they make their cut in the hole. Maybe they're just playing, just thud a tempo with the team, and the defense taps them, but they're going to run through and go touch the end zone. Where there's a lineman that has a rep, maybe they're running a play and the lineman is finishing out, running their feet even a little bit after the whistle goes down. It's a D lineman trying to get to the quarterback. The play is blown dead, but they still finish out their moves and cut that corner and run back. So to me, there's little motor things you see from guys. In basketball, to me, rebounding requires a motor, especially for the guard position, because it's something that you have to be very intentional about. And for me, when those numbers went up for Jaylen Green, I was like, okay, something is clicking. Now, we knew Ime Udoka said a focus of Jaylen for this year wasn't necessarily to highlight his strengths. We know Jaylen can score in high volume. The efficiency is always going to be a work in progress for a shooting guard, but we know he could score in high volume. What we didn't know was, could he do anything else? Could you play defense on a consistent level? Could you rebound? Could you, make the right plays? And I think over the years, if you weren't looking, he was actually picking up little bits here and there. And as we know, with anything in life, nothing is ever linear. Like, I think people expected him to come in and be like, okay, I'm going to figure out everything on day one, and I'm rebounding, passing, scoring efficiently. No, that's not how it's going to happen. He started rebounding in January. It translated into some defensive effort. So those things were coming. The efficiency was still a little bit down. They had the All-Star break. Coming out of the All-Star break, the efficiency on the twos started going up. The threes were still shaky, but the rebounding and assists, the all-around defense was incredible, right? You start seeing this build up, build up, build up to the point where it really culminates in the entire month that he had in the month of March, where we see him go supernova. And then he cools back down, right? He cools back down in April. And to me, you guys already know why. I know, like, he played well against some bad defenses. He played well against OKC, and shout out to their fan base. They're dying right now. But he played well against some bad defenses. But the reason those teams were bad defenses, not because they were necessarily like had bad defensive players, it's because the schemes they ran. He saw a lot of single coverage and a lot of drop bigs, right? When the NBA got word that Jaylen Green has a pulse as a generational scorer, they started trapping him. And then that's where we are right now. So we ended off with him reaching a new level of play as a rebounder, as a defender, as a playmaker, as a guy that, you know what I mean, still is finding his shot, but he shot efficiently. I still think the shot is going to be very, very important. But we saw all of that culminate with that March, and then April kind of cooled off a bit. I think they called the dogs off a little bit, and then teams were kind of strapping them down. So at this point where we are right now, what is a healthy expectation for Jaylen Green? What do you expect? Like, what is something that we should be looking at for him? For me, based on everything I just said, for me, it's real easy. It is real easy. Consistency. It comes down to consistency. You've had the Silas year one, which we can throw away, right? Year two, you got a little bit more, but then year three, you really started that structural journey. So now this year in year four is your time to build upon that foundation that was laid when Ime's first season was here. Now there's added pressures for him this year. He's playing for a contract that could either make or break him. There's players that rise up to the occasion and have their best seasons on contract years, and there are players that the pressures of it cause them to play outside of their game. I'm curious to see whether he has the maturity to be able to do that. I'm curious to see whether that is something that's not going to be a distraction for him, even when he has the struggles. Is that something he can lock in on, just playing the right way all the time? And I'm curious to see all of that, like whether he can do it. But for me, consistency. Can you be consistent as a scorer? Because that is what the team is asking for him to be. You're going to be the number one option on this team. Can you do your job? Right? The Patriots have a famous motto that says, do your damn job. Like, do your job. Can you do your job? If your job is to be a bucket, you have to be a bucket, and you have to do it in a winning manner, which includes being efficient. What have you worked on to get to that point? So I'm looking for him to be a consistently efficient scorer. Can you be a leader? Can you be a leader? And I'll touch on that a little bit, but can you be a leader? And can you work well with other players, right? And I haven't seen anything to show that Jaylen can't work well with other good players around him. Obviously, him and Sengun get along fine. Him and Fred get along fine. But if the Rockets were to add other star caliber players, or one of our players pops into supernova stratosphere, can he be a 1A? Can he be a 2? Can he be a 3? Can he be that third option, second option, and still keep that consistency? Because one thing, and I said this in the previous video, that we learned from the Olympics, no matter how talented a team is, right? No matter how talented a team is, it could be the USA, Team USA, with 5 players or 3 or 4 of those players are going to be top, 15, 20 greatest players of all times. Guess what? You still got to play your role, right? Devin Booker might be the best shooting guard in the NBA, but if you have 5 players on the court, somebody got to play defense, bro. Somebody got to pick up full court. So can you play a role that doesn't always require you to be the bucket, right? If coach asks you, okay, we're going to go to this set where we're focusing on this player, can you play that role? Can you be efficient in that role? These are the things that I'm trying to see from him. Consistency. And I think that if you look at the highs and you look at the lows, if you can get to a state where Jaylen Green falls right in between that, maybe he's not scoring, 25 points per game or 24 points per game. If he can give me an efficient 24-4 in year 4, I think he deserves every single penny that the Rockets are going to be willing to offer him. For Alperen Sengun, his story is a bit different than Jaylen Green's, right? So Alp, as we know, came in via, trades. OKC made the pick. We were able to snag him up as probably just like hey, this is a player that has a lot of potential, but we're not really like just focused on him on our rebuild. We have Jaylen, and we're going to have other picks coming up, but it's a great kind of put it in your back pocket pick, right? Came in year one, coming off the bench, became a fan favorite fairly quickly. For me, you guys already know, one of my first videos that got over 1,000 views on this channel was the comparison of him to Pau Gasol. I made that video, I think, right before the preseason or during the preseason of his rookie year, and just kind of highlighting all the things that have come to fruition for him. I personally think that, he flashed everything that he's shown like till this point early on. Like you could see it, the basketball knowledge, skill, touch, all that stuff is there, right? First year though, he was more of, a favorite. We had the Alperen and KJ Martin kind of bench unit that we used to love his rookie year. Not really a full thought on it. We just thought it'd be nice. Obviously there was a beef between the Alperen and the Christian Wood people, all three of the Christian Wood people that are out there, on whether he should start. I think by the second half of the season, we were like, bro, start this dude, because he was a analytics darling, right? So his first year, really not eventful, but the flashes were there to already start the narrative of people saying that this dude needs to start because he's that damn good, right? Second year comes in, they've moved Christian Woods out the way. Apparently the Rockets said he came into training camp out of shape, which I'm not sure how that works, because literally a few days or weeks later, he was playing 40 something minutes or 38 minutes a night. So whatever. But that second year, he comes in as the starter and he flashes even more, even though he's being used in a role as a kind of a secondary player for Kevin Porter Jr. and for Jaylen Green's kind of their guard perimeter game. He served his role well, set a lot of good screens, showed a lot of things, had some big games. One that comes to mind is the win against Memphis, where he came in and did his thing to help us seal the victory with the bench units. Flashed some really, really good games. He has a couple Lakers game that he had, just enough to show you that, okay, this is something more than just a back pocket player, right? And so the second year happens under Steven Silas. Obviously, we know all the lows, him being thrown out in drop coverage versus Dame, where Dame dropped 71. Coaches throw him under the bus. A lot of question whether the organization even values him as an asset, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We come to year three. Ime comes in. Same story with Jaylen, right? Same story with Jaylen. Structure. You bring in players that are able to cater to his needs with Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, players that aren't really eating their food off the young guy's plate. You make him a feature. Now, the Rockets obviously try to trade for Brook Lopez. Once again, I'm saying all this to build to a point that I'm going to make at the end about these two guys, right? They try to trade for Brook Lopez. That trade fell through, and then you're forced to stick with Alperen Sengun. And what does he do? Oh, I don't know. Anchors the top 10 defense, right? While averaging 21, 9, and 5 as a 21-year-old. So near all-star, etc. You guys know all the accolades. He goes down, he gets hurt. And so now we're at the point where we've seen Alperen Sengun kind of reach a certain baseline level where we know that he can be the starting center of a winning program, right? He can be the starting center of a top 10 defense. For me, what are the expectations for him this year? The expectations are going to be for him to up the level. These are tall expectations. But to me, for the Rockets to reach a certain pinnacle that they're trying to reach with Jaylen Green and Alperen Sengun and Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith, Tari, Cam Whitmore, Reed Shepherd, as kind of the core bunch that's going to be driving that, he has to up the level a little bit more. What do I mean by up the level? He has to be more efficient, right? He has to be more efficient, right? His shooting splits this year weren't terrible. I'm in certain zones, but he needs to be way more efficient. And to me, a lot of that comes down to conditioning. Alperen Sengun, when he is tired, is the player who a lot of people think he is, right? He's not getting rebounds. He's not, doing the stuff he wants. When he is fully energized, one of the best centers in the NBA, bar none. Like, you can argue with your mama. The dude is that good. Conditioning is going to be the key for him, in my opinion. And I've seen the videos of him working out, and they just dropped a clip of Jaylen Green hosting a kind of a little players only training camp with them, and he looks to be in shape. I think that if he can be conditioned where we can see the greatness that he brings for the 35 minutes he's out there and he's not getting gassed, I think that for him, the All-Star game and the All-NBA votes are really right there if the Rockets can have a winning season based on that. He is that good, right? He is that good. So my expectations for Sengun this year, dude, be more conditioned and up the level a little bit. Be more efficient, rebound better, and kind of enforce your will a little bit more on this league. And I feel like this is the year that he's going to deliver it. This is the year that he's going to deliver. Now, what does that mean for the both of them? These two players are going to be tied as long as they're Rockets players and on this roster and aren't traded away. They're going to be tied in together, right? And Sengun, as a player, as prominent as he is, as talented as he is, next to a dynamic guard as Jaylen Green. I've said this before. In the NBA, historically, when you look at some of the greatest teams, there is always a two-man dynamic between the perimeter guard or ball handler. Nowadays, it might not even be a guard nowadays. It could be a wing, a perimeter ball handler, and the interior player or the big man. There's a synergy there that goes, you know what I mean? That's a 1-2 combo that you need. Now, obviously, there are some exceptions, but I would say that a lot of times those exceptions are just players that aren't traditionally in those roles, fitting those roles. I'll give you an example. You look at all the teams that have won championships. It's all of it is always there, right? You had, obviously with the Warriors, Draymond and Steph. To me, with the Cavs, Kyrie and LeBron. And LeBron would be, setting those screens for Kyrie and playing that even though he wasn't a big man per se, but late in games, it came down to Kyrie and LeBron, setting screens for each other, trying to get isolations, right? Trying to get mismatches. Obviously, Jokic and Murray. You got Giannis and Drew or Middleton. So there's always this synergy. Shaq and Kobe, Wade and Shaq. You just pick your poison like Parker and Duncan, Ginobili and Duncan. You know what I mean? And you pick your poison. In this era of basketball, even till this day with all the three-point shooting, it's still always going to be a two-man game. And I think that if they can reach their bare potential, which is not like their ultimate potential, for me, Jaylen Green's consistency, just be the Jaylen that is not the worst player in the world. You don't have to be the best shooting guard in NBA history, but just be a good player, make the right plays, make the right reads, play to your strengths, be March Jaylen, but not even the supernova March. Just be March the Phoenix game Jaylen. Just be that Jaylen that's going to stick D and, play defense, be able to hit big shots when they need them, get to the basket, draw fouls, be that guy, right? And Sengun, be the Sengun that you are every single night, right? Be the same guy that you are when you're on every single night, right? We notice a lot of our players get fatigued throughout the year because they play a lot of minutes. Coach Udoka requires it. So if he is conditioned and is providing his greatness on a night-to-night basis and Jaylen is consistent, to me, there's no limit on what the Rockets can do. There's no limit on what the Rockets can do. Now, a video just dropped of Jaylen hosting and I alluded to this earlier, hosting a players-only kind of a training session with the players. To me, like one common theme between our players, especially these two, that I want you guys to be able to take comfort in when you're thinking about them, right? And whether they're going to be successful as NBA players. All the stuff I mentioned throughout their stories to get to where we are right now is really, I wanted to mention some of those barriers they faced to focus on the resiliency aspect of their journeys, right? For Jaylen, it's a lot of failure, right? Failure, I'm sure he recognizes, like, if you're any type of success or you reach the pinnacle in anything, you're really OCD about winning and just being good at your job, right? And, any of us are. I don't give a damn what you do. If you're somebody that takes pride in what you do, when you're not doing good. I know he knows when he's not playing good. So, but to go through those slumps, those really low lows, and still always come back, even if it's post All-Star break, even if it's the next season, and have that drive to keep going, to me, that's pretty good, right? Those are the characteristics you want of somebody that you want to kind of put a lot of faith in. And I think that for him, hosting this camp shows a lot of maturity and growth towards where he's trying to be. For Sengun, he's been doubted every single step of his NBA career. And all he's done is just outshine and outclass and just really show up anybody that has said he couldn't do something. They said he's not an NBA level athlete. Got on there and was cooking everybody, right? They said that he couldn't start, right? Not conditioned enough to keep, he's going to foul out the games too fast. Played a full season as a starter. Third year, they said that, we're worried about his defense. Anchored a top 10 defense. Not saying he's the greatest defender in the world, but hey, defense is a team game, right? Anchor the top 10 defense, right? Top 6, I think the top 5 for a reasonable amount of the season. So he's overcome every narrative that has been set against him. Jaylen has overcome any of the mental barriers that he might face. And for it to culminate in seeing them playing together in a summer in a players only practice, this is stuff that you see veteran laden teams do. Whatever sport, right? When the guys get together and push it. We saw James Harden do stuff like this in the past where they would go on retreats and stuff like that to go hoop. Like this is, to me, this is just a culmination of all of their journeys coming to this point where we've reached a level of maturity with our players, our babies that came in 2020, 2021, or whatever their draft year, to reach at this point where now they got mustaches. And some of y'all are young. Some of y'all are young, so you don't see them as babies. I'm a little older. I said this on Twitter the other day. They had a video of Warren Sapp talking about the players on Colorado saying that the babies always reach out to him. I ain't gonna lie, I see a lot of our players as babies, bro. Not like literal babies, but they're kids, man. They're kids to me. So seeing them with their mustache and little goatees now, Jabari done put on a little muscle. You know what I mean? You got guys that they filled in, their voice a little deeper. Seeing the evolution of these guys get to this point where they're starting to see the big picture about what it takes to win, what it takes to win together as a team is going to be worth the wait. This year, I expect a lot from these players, but I'm going to be realistic. Jaylen Green, can you be consistent? Alperen Sengun, can you be conditioned? To me, if they figure out those two things and come into the season playing that way with the cast of young guys we have around us, we're not even talking about Reed and the men and Tari and Jabari. And then we got our vets coming in, Fred, Steven Adams coming in, got one of the best coaches in the league. Hey, man, the sky's the limit for this season. I expect them to deliver. That is my views and expectations for Alperen Sengun and Jaylen Green. If you agree with me, let me know in the comments. If you disagree, let me know in the comments as well. I know these are two polarizing players with the fan base, but appreciate you guys for me sitting through this video. Just wanted to kind of share my thoughts on that. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. Keep rocking with the Chop Shop, and we're gonna keep dropping that fire.
DJ Candlestick. It's the Chop Not Slap Show.